Family, welcome to another episode of the Move with Marcedes. This is a safe space, a space where purpose meets power, and we talk about the moves that will help you shape your life. Today's conversation is one that's very personal for me because it's a conversation about vision. It's a conversation about resilience and survival in tough seasons. My guest, my brother, Jaylen LaGrande, is here, and Jaylen is the founder of what I consider to be the iconic 316 collection. It's a faith-based apparel brand, but it's just so much more than that. And we'll talk about it. But this brand has generated over $10 million in sales, and it's changing the way that people see God's word. He's also the creator of $1 million brands. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's a faithpreneur who's been equipping entrepreneurs and ministries all over the world. But beyond all the success, Jaylen finds himself now in a season that every entrepreneur knows so well, a season of transition. And today we're going to talk about what it takes to survive, and we're going to talk about why 316 is such a necessary brand right now. And we're going to talk to Jaylen about how we can all keep moving forward when life gets hard. Jaylen, welcome to the Move. We've been talking about making this conversation happy, so I'm happy that it's happening right now today, and I thank you. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. Number one, I appreciate being here. Excited to jump into this conversation and hopefully, pieces of my story inspire other people to just stay in the fight no matter what it looks like, to stay in the fight regardless of what it feels like, to rise above the emotions, to rise above whatever it is that's trying to block you from your next.
Yeah. And I'm so happy about the fact that we're having this conversation today, because I feel, and I've been feeling, and we've talked about this, how this conversation, I believe, will set many free.
Yes.
But I also believe that it's a conversation that will set you free.
Amen.
And I thank you for trusting me with this conversation. So let's talk. And I think the format of this is going to be like one of our normal conversations.
Absolutely. Where
we allow others to just kind of eavesdrop in, which we never do.
Yes.
Because our conversations are our conversations. But this one, we're going to let people listen in. Where are you at right now in life as an entrepreneur?
That is a very loaded question. I would say if I had to label this season, I would call it not just a season of transition, but a season of rebuilding. Mm-hmm. And I think, a lot of times people, well, especially when we read the Bible and all of that, you look at a lot of times where things had to be rebuilt. And something that I admire about rebuilding is if, let's say, your house catches on fire and, the insurance company pays you out to rebuild the house, you're not going to rebuild it exactly the way it was. You're going to build it with improvements based on how things did not work out, in a previous season. And so while that sounds good in theory, it's still hard to rebuild because we're people of comfort. We're people who like to just, go through the ease of life and things just kind of flow. But oftentimes what I've learned over the years of being an entrepreneur, now I think I'm celebrating year 22 of being an entrepreneur. Wow. I've learned that oftentimes God will send us through a rebuilding phase because he's trying to up our rank or our authority in the spirit realm. Mm-hmm. And it's not comfortable. It's not easy. It's not any of those things, but it's one of those things that are necessary to truly grow us and to take us to those new levels that we never asked for, or those levels that we never imagined. Because what typically happens is if God can trust you on this level, he wants to take you to the next level.
Absolutely.
And, it's a beautiful thing to have the trust of God. But it's also one of those things where it's like, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask, I was comfortable where I was. But I've witnessed my life in so many seasons of transition that every time God sent me through a season like this, the next season was like more beautiful than I ever imagined. And so that's the hope that I cling to, even in difficult seasons like this, is this next season that will be unlocked after this will be just beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. I have to regroup from just hearing your answer to that.
Yeah.
You talk about being in a difficult season. Talk to me about what makes this season a difficult season.
I think unfortunately, the power dynamic of being an entrepreneur is we're used to having control and we're used to being the boss. But when you are in a season where nothing that you can do can like alter anything that's happening and you have to have a full reliance on God. We sing the songs all the time, I trust in God, and we quote the scriptures, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding. It's one thing to say that, but it's an entirely different thing to live that. And so I think what makes it so difficult is, human nature says, I want to be in circumstances and situations that I can control the outcome of. But when God throws you in the fire and you have to truly rely on him, it's difficult. It's hard. It's like you wake up every day and you're just like, okay, God, where am I at today? And so to be an entrepreneur who has built a brand from 38 cents to over 17 million in lifetime sales, to have, the record of big distribution centers and selling products in 46 countries around the world, to be the person that, I was a young boy from Detroit who never imagined I would have any type of reign in the fashion industry because I don't have fashion experience. I just knew this is where God called me. And to be in that position where I was in a position of power to now be in a position where sometimes I don't even know what the next looks like. It's difficult. And I think it's because the flesh tries to process things that the spirit has to take authority over. And so I think that's what makes it difficult. The human part of me, meeting the spiritual side of me and understanding that this is not happening to me, it's happening for me, but still being able to process my emotions because I am human. Still being able to process the small things like, okay, I got bills to pay, God. I got people depending on me. And so what does this look like? And though he's never failed me, sometimes that fight or flight emotion comes up and rises up in you and you're like, whoa, like this is beyond anything that I ever thought. But, I always take it back to the word where, when the 3 Hebrew boys were thrown in the furnace or Jonah was thrown in the well or Joseph was thrown into the pit, we read those stories and we read them so fast, we celebrate it, but we don't realize this was people's real life.
Absolutely.
And so when we go through those things, it's like, I can sit and tell people I started this brand with 38 cents and I was selling shirts out of the trunk of the car and God took it to a $17 million company. But that was over a process of 14 years. Right. And so to the person who's hearing that story in 14 seconds, it's like, oh, God, it's so good. But the person who has to live that for 14 years, it's not as, beautiful. And so a lot of times when we do get to that expected place, there's so much trauma that we're dealing with from the 14 years it took us to get there. We're trying to process that. And everybody's like, you're not happy? You're not this? You're not that? And it's like, if you understood what I had to go through to get here, yes, I am excited about what God did, but this was scary.
Absolutely.
I had to navigate stuff and trust God in ways that I never imagined I would have to trust God.
Absolutely.
And so I think the power of the testimony is retracing what God has done so that you know what God will do, even on a different scale in the season that he's taking you to.
Wow. Retracing what God has done. And let that encourage you and keep the faith about what he's doing next. Wow. Wow. So many people know, millions of people know the 316 collection. But that wasn't your first rodeo in business.
No. Take
me back, 11-year-old entrepreneur. Before we dive into 316 even further, Take me back to 11-year-old Jaylen. What was he doing? Talk to the people about the first business, because I know. Talk to us about it.
So my first love has always been writing. I just love to write. I had a childhood where, most people are like, oh, you come from a 2-parent household. That's amazing. All those things. I watched my mom and dad navigate so much stuff. They separated around the time I was 11, actually. But something that people don't realize is that 2-parent household doesn't always mean perfect. And I had a lot of people who would be jealous, of me and my sister, like, oh, y'all got this, y'all got that, y'all got that. But there was so many things behind closed doors people did not see. And for me, writing was always an escape. It was like I could go and sit in a corner. And to this day, at 33 years old, I still will go sit on the floor, Indian style, in a corner and write. And it allows me to create. And I believe that before I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a creator. And before God was anything in the word, he was a creator. It says he stepped out into the darkness and the deep and he said, let there be. And so my entrepreneurship was formed from creating worlds. I would write stories. I would write poetry. I would write these things that would take me to places that I never imagined. And what I didn't realize was I was prophesying my future. And so my first business, legal business, and when I say legal, not in the sense of I was doing anything illegal, but the first business that I registered at 11 years old, it was called Jay's Card Designs. And even at 11, I was writing greeting cards and doing all this stuff, making business cards for the people in church. And I would go to the local card shops, the local Christian bookstores, and I would pitch my cards and get these contracts. I went on a couple years later to open a cleaning company, and I got a contract with a real estate company. I was like 14 years old, getting paid $50 a house to clean old rehab houses. And it was always just this ambition and drive that I carried. And I believe that I carried that because, one, it was in my bloodline, but two, it was like I could create my own world. I could escape the reality of being in Detroit where it's crime ridden and all of these things. But no matter where I was, I could always create a sub environment in that place. And my true gift outside of writing, outside of creativity, has always been to reverse engineer something. And so I've always had the ability to walk into something and I can pull it apart and put it back together again. And I believe that's part of just the apostolic, bringing order. But I also believe a big part of that is God giving me that ability to look at things and to break it down to the simplest level in order to help other people to flourish in that same place. Absolutely. And so every business that I've built essentially has been me breaking down something. And wow, even what the revelation that just came to me was rebuilding, but rebuilding it properly, rebuilding it with the things that, didn't matter or didn't make sense, to optimize. And so, wow, even saying that now it's making a lot of sense for the season I'm in because, yes, I've had great success with 316 and all the things, but there have been some places and moments where growth came at a heavy acceleration and all those things. And, it maybe wasn't optimized to the way it needed to be. And so just being a rebuilder, and it's not comfortable. It's definitely not comfortable. I think about this scripture that has been heavy on my heart the last year and a half. It's in the book of Ezra where they were rebuilding the temple. And the scripture says that the people of the land hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose so that they wouldn't build. Wow. And when you really think about that, that's what the enemy does. Wow. He brings people, he literally will hire a slew of people to frustrate your purpose so that you won't rebuild. But if you go down just a little bit in that story, the king comes and he says, you know what? They stuck through it, even amidst the counselors that came to frustrate their purpose. They stuck through it, even amidst the emotions. They stuck through it, even amidst the physical complications. Give them access to the treasuries of the land and give them everything they need to build. And so that says to me, if you just stick with it a little while longer, and if you want to take this into a practical sense, my favorite book, Think and Grow Rich, it starts off with the story of R.U. Darby and the California Gold Rush. And my favorite part of that story is it talks about how the man gave up 3 feet away from gold. He sold his birthright and he sold it to a homeless man. And 3 feet from where he stopped digging, this man struck billions of dollars worth of gold. Wow. And so, you might not relate to it from a biblical perspective, but if you want to relate to it from a practical perspective, don't give up 3 feet away from gold. Wow. Keep digging. Wow. Keep building. Keep showing up.
Wow. Keep digging. Keep building. Keep showing up. That's advice that we're going to take from this conversation, and we're just getting started.
Yes.
Keep digging. keep building, keep showing up. Jaylen, so we fast forward from the 11-year-old entrepreneur and everything that you have done, everything that you've built. It's been admirable. You've built some great stuff. And hopefully you're proud of what God has built through you. Because I believe God is proud of the work that you've been able to do and the lives that you've been able to impact. So fast forward from 11-year-old entrepreneur Jaylen to 33-year-old entrepreneur Jaylen. Here we grow again. Let's dive deeper into where you believe the 316 collection is right now. People see the products. They wear the products. You know, you have products, clients, customers all over the world. So they see the product, but they don't see what's going on behind the scenes. What does the behind the scenes look like today for 316?
Yeah, I would say, people see the product, they celebrate the promise, but many people don't see the process. And I'll admit that, over the years, I've done a very good job at telling stories of breakthrough once the breakthrough happens. And, it sounds good, but there's been times that I haven't always shared people in the process of that. And I think that that's something that God has been dealing with me heavy on now is a lot of times we look at successful people and, it's easy to, have jealousy or envy towards them because of where they are. But I think that if more of us opened up about what it truly takes, a lot of people wouldn't feel like a failure. I think about some people that I've looked up to over the years, even mentors I have now who are billionaires and stuff. And gratefully, I've been able to sit and have breakfast with people and break bread with people. And, sometimes you'll be like, oh, you got billions of dollars. This is easy for you to say. But what I learned is we're all still figuring it out. I went to breakfast a couple weeks ago with one of my mentors, 75-year-old billionaire. And he's still, he's great. He's amazing. He has a heart to serve. But when I kind of started opening up to him about some of the stuff I was dealing with, he just sat there smiling. And I'm like, are you happy that I'm in the struggle? And he's like, Jaylen, I'm so sorry that I'm smiling right now. He said, but I'm smiling because at 33, God is giving you lessons that I didn't get until 53 or 63. He said, and it shows me that you're going to go so much further than I have.
Wow.
And I was like, that sounds good. That sounds really good. But I need some help right now.
Today.
Today. And so just to kind of take people back through these last 18 months or so, I think the biggest lesson that I'll say, even before I go into the details of what's going on, is always focus on the area that you're strong and never be too strong that you can't ask for help. I think that, I never imagined that this business would grow to the magnitude that it did. I know God is faithful, and I know that I'm a faithful servant. I know I'm a faithful steward. And so, anytime faith and stewardship and obedience merge, there's always going to be a harvest. I didn't know the magnitude of what that harvest would look like. And so being caught up in the whirlwind of, the sales and the massive influence and the massive, celebrity endorsements and all the things that happened, I kind of got ahead of myself in a way of like, Jaylen, you were called to create, you were called to do all of these things, but maybe you're not the best operational person. And so there were operational deficiencies that I had as I scaled. And I want that to be a lesson to entrepreneurs that, you got to get help. There's a book that I've been reading lately called Rocket Fuel, and it talks about the visionary and the integrator. And when I tell you I was sitting on the airplane reading this book and it set me free in a way that a sermon couldn't have, it was like this book literally explained the last 20 years of my life. Wow. It talked about how Walt Disney was a visionary, but his brother was an integrator. And so he had to have that person who could come on with the operational skills to set with his vision skills so that they can take that to a level that it couldn't be taken to. And I realized that I've sat in this seat and I've tried to do both. And listen, when you first start a business, you're going to have to do both.
You have to do both.
You're going to have to be the janitor. You're going to have to be the creator. You're going to have to be the website person. You're going to have to be the content creator. You're going to have to be everything. But there comes a time where you have to release the reins and you have to surrender certain parts of your business. And so it took me getting to this place of, I won't say losing, but this place of what looked like failure to realize, actually, God spoke to me years ago and told me, you're going to have 316, but you won't run it. And that scared me. I mean, like it pierced my ego. And I think that's why we have to learn, again, to separate the things of the flesh over the things of the spirit, because God will tell us and show us a thing before he shows us a thing. But sometimes we'll block that on our own. And so I've been in a season where I've been dealing with depression. I've been dealing with just feeling like a failure. I've been dealing with all the emotions that come with that. But when I really think about all of those things, all of that stuff is temporal stuff that's in my mind and in my flesh. And how can the enemy reach us? He reaches us through our mind. He reaches us through our flesh. And so, you know, the small things that have been occurring in business, I'm realizing that some of this stuff is just natural stuff that I can combat in the spiritual realm.
Absolutely.
But also the natural stuff that I could have combated in the natural realm was simply saying, okay, maybe I don't know how to run a multi-million-dollar business because I've never had to run a multi-million-dollar business. And instead of thinking everybody's out here to take advantage of me, maybe it's okay for me to sit down with a accountant or a CPA and say, hey, I'm making this money. Where do I put this? Where do I invest this? A lot of times I think access is the issue for us as people of color. And even, you know, in 2023, I started fundraising. You couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to get my pitch deck out there, go in front of investors, and I wasn't going to raise $1.5 million in 30 minutes. It didn't happen like that. I got in front of these people. One, they underestimated me. It's like they thought, oh, this is just a kid with, you know, a little pipe dream clothing line. And then when they saw those numbers on the screen, they're like, whoa, you've been able to do that all on your own? And so I'm realizing that, you know, a lot of this is like me trying to do things on my own. The Bible literally gives us a strategy for multiplication. It says one can slay 1,000, two can slay 10,000. And so just by adding someone in to help you, you 10x your power. And it's the same thing in business. And again, I think that, you know, I had to go through this season for the level of authority that God has given me for this next level so that I understand, you know what, Jaylen, don't get caught up in the numbers. Don't get caught up in all those things. Yes, that stuff is important, but why did you start this to begin with?
Right.
You started this for impact. You started this for all of those things. And I always tell people, I'm in this for the outcome, not the income. And when you're in it for the outcome, the income will succeed itself.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I've been in a season where back in May, I had to close down my distribution center. And I won't lie, it's been a season of grief. And I didn't realize until now that, you know, all my life, I realized you can grieve people, but I never realized you could grieve places. I never realized you could grieve seasons. But if we think about the Israelites, the reason why they floated in the wilderness for so long is because they were grieving a season.
Absolutely.
They were grieving a place that wasn't even healthy for them. God wanted to give them something so much greater, but they were comfortable.
Yeah.
And so they grieved a place for so long. And so, you know, I've recently got to the place where I'm like, you know what? I'm no longer going to grieve this place. I'm no longer going to grieve this place because I know the place that God is trying to take me is going to like throw that to a whole different.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
Absolutely. So operations had to shift.
Yes.
Distribution center closed.
Yes.
Talk to me about what happened to the team that you had. First, tell me, how many people did we have on the team? What was that structure like? And then what shift did you have to make with your team?
At any given point, I would have 14 to 17 people on staff full time. And I realized, let me say this, and this is not spiritual advice. This is just natural advice. Entrepreneurs need therapy. Because if you never heal the inner child, you're going to always overcompensate in ways that you never imagined. And so when I started making a lot of money, I felt like I owed it to everybody else to just hire people. And so I started hiring. And what I realized was I was trying to hire people to fill voids that was just childhood wounds and trauma. And I kept people on the team longer than I should have because they weren't necessarily performing where they needed to perform. And I realized like business is business, personal is personal. And so I won't lie, I've had employees since I was 17 years old. And I mean, on W-2 employees. I mean, I had employees prior to that, kids in the neighborhood helping me with bake sales and stuff. But I've probably had to let go of over 100 people. Every time I've had to let somebody go, I would be in my car crying before I went to do it. I had a girl back in Lubbock, this was 2014, I believe, stealing money from me. At the time, 2014, I probably was maybe 20 years old, maybe, I don't know, somewhere around that. And this was a 40-plus-year-old woman stealing money from me, popping pills in the back of the store and doing stuff. And I cried having to fire her. And I'm like, you're doing me wrong, and I'm crying having to fire you because I had inner wounds that had never been healed. And so I always tried to overcompensate. And so I had, people on the team, and I realize now, I'm like, God, the money ran out. All of these things happened. I wasn't a bad steward. Like, I wasn't out here buying new cars. I wasn't out here wearing chains. I wasn't out here doing none of that stuff. I wasn't out here going on fancy vacations and, blowing money on bags and doing all this stuff. But what God showed me was like, stewardship is not always about money. Sometimes stewardship is letting people overstay their welcome in your life. Sometimes stewardship is about, that person that you should have let go because you knew they were draining the resources of the business, but you couldn't stand up to that because you had some wounds that you couldn't heal. And so I think that was a big part of it is I kept people around because it filled space, but it wasn't productive. And I didn't hire the right people necessarily. Sometimes our mindset, even if we have the $1 million in the bank, we may still have the poverty mindset. And so, I was hiring, I won't say low-level people because I'm not saying that in a place of offense, but I could have took 7 positions and hired an operations person who could have scaled me to a different level. But in my head, I'm like, I can't afford that. Realizing now I couldn't afford not to because the resources was just drained in a different way. And so that's been a big part of the lesson. And I think that's been a big part of like this place that God is trying to take me to because so many people do look up to me and so many people, count on my wisdom and all that. I couldn't get the wisdom if I didn't go through this.
Right. Absolutely. So what does the team look like today?
It's me. It's back to the basics. Me shipping orders out of a storage unit, a messy storage unit. It does not look good. Every time I go, I get like cringy because I'm like, my OCD kicks in and I'm just like, okay. But even in that, I think the beauty of that for me has been like, no matter what happens, no matter who leaves, no matter who stays, no matter any of those things, like to know that God still trusts me to still show up, to know that people still love 316 the way they do, to know that even the website's been down for about 8 weeks now, which it'll be back up tomorrow. That's a whole nother story. Even in the midst of that, the thousands of DMs that have come through, the people who have randomly Cash App and Zelled me, and I'm like, what is this for? They're like, I need my hoodie. And I'm like, well, why you say, well, the website ain't up, but I know you got them hoodies. I need, and so to know that you can build something that will outlast your depression. Wow. You can build something that will outlast these temporary emotions. Yes. You can build something that will outlast these feelings of failure. You can build something that will outlast like this pressure. Like you build something so massive that it will sustain you in ways that you never imagined it will sustain you. And I think that's the beauty of building and laboring with God is he will cause you to build something that will later save you.
Right. And that he trusts you to build it.
Yes.
Is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
So we've worked our way up from 11-year-old entrepreneur Jaylen, 14-year-old, now the 33-year-old. We went from the big staff to being you and God now on the payroll, if you will.
Yes.
When you just pause and sit in this season of where you are, share with me, what are your 3 biggest prayers right now for your business?
I would say the first prayer is for me to realize what God wants it to be versus what I wanted it to be. Because I think that naturally ambition will step in and cause us to go after things and metrics that never made sense, that were never even on the radar. You know, we'll have conversations with other entrepreneurs and they'll say, well, I did 50 million this year. What did you do? And then you're in your head like, well, I need to do 50 million. But I'm going to tell you this. I remember the first year, I think this was 2019, that I hit my first 7-figure year. I think we did 1.6 million that year. And I sat down with my CPA and she was like, the good news is you grossed 1.9 or 1.6 million. I'm like, okay, you know, I'm all happy, I'm smiling. I'm like, I did it. I had my first $1 million year. And the crazy part about that is God told me when I was 14 that I would be a millionaire by 26. On my 26th birthday, I was depressed because I didn't have $1 million in my account. And it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 months later that I was sitting down with the auditor and all of that. And she was like, your net worth is over $1 million. And I realized God kept his promise. He never said that I would have $1 million liquid. He just said I'd be a millionaire. A millionaire is all about assets and all of those things.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes I'm like, it's perspective. You know, I was mad at God because he said something and he didn't do it, when in fact he did do it. He did it. I just didn't know how to realize what he did. But anyway, what she said was, you made $1.6 million. And I'm like, great. Well, the bad news is you only profited $13,000. I'm like, huh? After all that, I walk away with $13,000. And it showed me a lot of people are caught up in metrics, especially in this generation. People will get online and show you a screenshot and say they made $5 million and they didn't take home nothing. Right. People have been in a deficit. I remember I sat down with the business to consult. They were doing $20 million a year. And they were literally in the hole $3 million every year. But on social media, they're telling all these people we're doing $20 million a year. And so people are rushing out to buy their classes and people are jealous of them and rushing out to do all of this stuff. Not realizing they're living this lifestyle on credit. Because if you make $20 million and you spend $23 million, you didn't really make $20 million. Right. And I think that's why when we're in this social media generation where people show you the highlight reel, a lot of us are getting jealous over a highlight reel, not understanding what's really going on, the mechanics going on the inside. Absolutely. And so the word says, beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. A lot of these people are prospering in the sense of finances, so to speak, but their health ain't right. And when I say health, I don't mean sickness. Their soul ain't prospering. And so it's like, would I rather have this money? Would I rather have all these things, or would I rather my soul prosper? Would I rather know that the work of my hands is blessing people in a way that money never could? Right. And so that made me kind of reevaluate so many things. Listen, money is amazing. It's a great tool. We need it. We need it to survive. We need it to be a blessing to other people. But God wants us to be profitable in our endeavors. If you look at the parable of the talents, that was a lesson about profitability. Yes. That was a lesson about EBITDA. That was a lesson about all those things. Absolutely. Because the guy who buried his talent, he got removed. Absolutely. But the one who doubled it. And so, yes, God wants us to be profitable, but God don't want us to go out there and make a bunch of money and then spend a bunch of money on frivolous things. And that includes employees. That includes buildings that we don't need. That includes cars, you know, that we don't need to necessarily have, but we use it as a marketing tactic. Yeah. Because if we're being honest, it's dishonest. Absolutely. And God is not going to bless anything that has a dishonest face to it. And I had to learn, like, you know what, at the end of the day, I rushed out and did a bunch of things that didn't make sense because I thought that's what I should do. I thought I should have this big staff. I thought I should have that. But what I learned just from my own testimony is God has done way more on way less. And so even with it being just me again, I'm like, we're going to get back to these multi-million-dollar years. And this time, it's not going to be at a deficit. It's going to be at a place where I'm going to be able to be a blessing to the people I need to be a blessing to.
So speaking of this time, what has to change?
I think the first thing that has to change is, again, what I said earlier, me shifting to realize it wasn't happening to me. It was happening for me. I think the next thing that has to change is I have to be strategic in who I bring on going forward. And I think the last thing that would necessarily have to change is I think that I have to allow myself to get out of the way.
Yes.
I realized that every season of transition I've ever been in, it's been to unlock a new level of grace. It's been to unlock a new level of just like prosperity. And so it's like every time you level up, you're going to step back into that place of darkness. But even though the place of darkness is uncomfortable, creatives thrive in those places, because that's the place you can create. That's the place that you can become. That's the place you can say, let there be, and watch it happen.
Absolutely. So what does you getting out of the way, what does that look like?
I think the main thing is coming out of hiding, coming out of isolation. I think that, again, this season I've been kind of isolated, and, you know, it's almost like self-sabotage, because there's a lot of people that want to help. There's a lot of people that want to come forth. But people can't help what they don't know needs help. People can't serve in places they don't need serving. People can't be a blessing to places that they don't need to be a blessing to. And so I think that just opening my mouth and having these transparent, vulnerable conversations, opening my mouth to ask, you know, again, healing that childhood wound of rejection. Like, I stopped fundraising because the first few people said no. And yes, I had some success with the fundraising, which, you know, we could talk about that on another episode, because that's a whole nother topic in itself.
Absolutely.
Fundraising is crazy, especially in our community. But I think, going back to what we said before, keep digging and keep building. That's what I'm gonna have to do, is just show up every day, because I know how to do that.
Absolutely.
And I can't let these temporal emotions rule me. You know, I let it rule me from May till a couple weeks ago. I let it keep me in this place of bondage and depression, where I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna lay in this bed and just do the bare minimum just to make sure my bills are paid. But that's not me, and that's not what I was called to do. That's not what I was created to do. So to every counselor that was put on payroll to frustrate my purpose, I'm serving you a notice that your job is over.
Come on.
This role is no longer required, because I'm about to rise above and I'm about to eat.
Yes. You better serve that notice right here on The Move.
Yeah.
You talk about the help that you need right now.
Yeah.
You have a community that supports you, that follows you, that they rep your brand, ultimately repping God all over the world. So I want you to see them as your support system in this moment. What do you need from your support system? What do you need us to do for you and your brand right now?
It's literally as simple as, if you ain't got money, share a post. If you got a couple of extra dollars, buy a shirt. It's literally that simple. It's like, I'm not asking for a handout. I'm not asking for anything, you know, a donation, any of those things. Like, I have a viable business. I have an amazing product. In exchange for your beautiful dollars, you get a beautiful product. And so literally as simple as the people coming together to say, you know what, let me go on the 316 website. Let me buy a shirt. Let me buy a hoodie. Let me share it with a friend. That in itself will literally be the thing I need, you know, on the move, is to give me that movement and that traction back to build what I know can be built. I mean, we've done it. We've done it 100 times. And so that it's literally that simple. It's just buying a shirt, supporting.
Absolutely. And I can't say it enough. We know your brand is quality.
Yes.
Your brand has been placed in some of the most phenomenal spaces. It has been worn. It has been endorsed by some of the biggest names and biggest brands. And what gets me about your brand and the power of God is that people, spiritual and secular alike, rep your brand.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's the gospel going forth.
Yes.
So we know it's quality.
Yes.
And so the biggest thing that I need people to do, not only support your brand, but it will ultimately impact their faith and their spirituality by even just going out on your website, taking a look and having something tangible to be a representation of what they believe. And it be quality. And it be quality. So I ask right now, selfishly, for people to go out, look at your website, look at your brand, support what you do, but I want them to go back and check the receipts of what your brand has meant to the world, but what it means to the world right now.
Yes. Yes.
I need you to understand how necessary you are, Jaylen.
Yes.
And I need you to understand how necessary your brand is. And I'm grateful that you didn't quit. All the times
Yes.
that you had an opportunity
Absolutely.
to quit, I'm grateful that you did not. I'm also grateful for those that have surrounded you in this journey, your mentors, your counsel, your support system. I'm grateful for how they didn't let you quit.
Yes.
I'm grateful for how God continues to pour vision into you. And I know that we haven't seen the last of you. I know we haven't seen the last of the 316 collection. I know that you've been in the game for 22 years, but I think this is a new beginning for you.
Absolutely.
I know it's a new beginning, and you only go up from here. I thank the listeners in advance for what they will do in form of supporting your brand, but it's also them investing in their faith.
Yes.
As well. As we prepare to wrap up, this has been not only a conversation, but I believe that it's been a masterclass for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I think it's also it's been a masterclass of vulnerability for entrepreneurs, which is a thing that we shy away from.
Absolutely.
Because, like you said, we want to show the highlight reels. We want to show the successes, but we don't tap into those areas of opportunity. I don't say failure often. I say areas of opportunity.
Yes.
But let's just call a thing a thing. When we fall, we don't show that.
Yeah.
We don't show the wounds. We don't show the scrapes. We just show when we're making it, and we show the glow ups.
Yeah.
So I thank you for your vulnerability, but talk to entrepreneurs real quick about what they need to do to survive a season like what you found yourself in, the season that you're in now.
I think the main thing that you have to do is allow yourself space and room to feel, but don't allow those feelings to grip you to a place that you don't move forward or you don't have progress. Newton's first law says an object in motion stays in motion, an object at rest stays at rest. And though it's important to have pockets of rest, though it's important that rest is vital and critical, don't ever allow anything to steal your momentum. Because once your momentum is taken and you get to that place of isolation, that's where all those thoughts form, and those thought barriers are literally what keep you kind of hostage. You become hostage to your own thoughts. You become hostage to your own pieces that you feel like, oh, I can't do this. And that's just not the truth. Anytime you get to that place, open that word and remind yourself who God says you are. God says that you are more than a conqueror, that you're complete. He says that he will lead us beside still water. So anytime you feel like things are messy, ask God to lead you beside the still waters. Ask him to take you to those places of green pastures, those places of growth. Ask him to restore your soul, because his name is on the line, not yours. And also, I would say this. You said that people don't often like to show the scars and all of that stuff. But like, if we think about building in the natural, building is messy. Why do you think they wear knee pads? Why do you think they wear hard hats? And so I want to encourage you to put on the armor of God as you build what you're called to build, because that helmet of salvation is not going to just preserve you for the sake of salvation, but it's going to preserve your thoughts. It's going to preserve your mind. That breastplate of righteousness is going to literally guard you and gird you in those moments where things get tough and things get hard. And so you got to stay in the fight, but you got to armor up for what God is calling you to build. And the last thing I will say is this. Oftentimes when God calls you to build, there will not be a point of reference.
Hmm.
And you're going to have to lean strictly and solely on the voice of God, because he's calling you to be the blueprint. He's calling you to be the
Yes.
first. He's calling you to be the pioneer. He's calling you to blaze the trail. And oftentimes in our human nature, we try to go and search ChatGPT and Google and all these places for a frame of reference for what God has called us to build. It doesn't exist yet.
Right.
And it will not exist until you step out there to create it. And when you create it, I remember when I started 316 in 2015 after failed religious expressions, nobody was doing Christian apparel on this scale. Nobody was doing cut and sew in the Christian apparel world. Everybody thought I was crazy. Even some of the mega churches I work with, they said nobody will ever pay $100 for a jacket. Nobody will ever pay $200 for this. Nobody will ever pay that for that. And they didn't believe it until they had to believe it. They didn't believe it until they had to start seeing everybody else start going in that direction. Now there's countless cut and sew apparel lines. When I started this, though, it didn't exist.
Right.
But God called me to be the trailblazer. He called me to be the pioneer. And other people was able to follow in that. And people often ask me, well, you don't get mad at that? Absolutely not. Because this was never about me. The more Christian clothing lines we have in the world with quality, the more the agenda of the gospel gets preached through the earth.
Sir.
This is bigger than me. And so I am grateful that God called me to be the conduit to say, let's shift this industry. Let's shake this up. Let's do something different, because the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, but the violent taketh by force. And this is the time that we got to rise up as believers in every industry, in every sector.
Absolutely.
And we have to become the hands and feet of Jesus like never before, because as we can see with these government shutdowns and everything else that's going on, we can't depend on the system.
Come on.
The only system and the only currency that we're going to be able to ride on in these days to come is the kingdom of God. And the kingdom ambassadors have to step up. So get out of your head. That depression that you feeling, that low self-esteem you feeling, that anxiety you feeling, it's just a feeling. It's just something the enemy is trying to trick you out of, because he knows the power on the inside of you. And so you got to get out of that emotion. You got to rise above that thing, and you got to build what God called you to build. It's going to be ugly. It's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be times that you're going to be like, I can't do this, but just push past that. And I promise you that God is going to give you a strength that you never knew you had. He's going to give you a idea and a dream that's going to literally catapult you, and it's going to literally change the economy. It's going to literally change the generations to come. But first thing you got to do is step outside of yourself and allow God to use you in ways that you never thought you could be used.
Wow.
That's it.
What's one move that you want every listener to make this week? One move.
Just start. That's it. Just start. You know, we can come up with every excuses. We can try to be perfectionists. We can try to business plan ourselves to death. We can try to call every friend in our phone book. Hey, bro, what you think about this? Hey, girl, what you think about this? Stop calling people who God didn't call to what he's called you to do, because they'll never understand.
Wow.
They'll talk you out of it every time because they don't have the frame of reference to understand what God called you to do.
Absolutely.
Stop trying to get validation from people who God didn't call to do that. Just start. And I promise you, if you just start, God is going to bless that. I started with 38 cents to my name. I didn't imagine it would be a multi-million-dollar empire. And the craziest thing, this morning in prayer, God told me, Jaylen, that 17 million in lifetime sales, that's going to become a monthly thing for you in this next season.
Wow.
But it comes with just starting. I could have used every excuse in the book. Oh my God, I've never seen anybody do a high quality Christian shirt. Oh my God, I've never seen a black person open a store in a high-end mall. I had stores across from Armani Exchange, 2 doors down from Louis Vuitton, all of that. But I just started. People literally come to me and they think, oh, what's your secret to success? I just started. I just trusted God. Even when the bank account said I didn't have it, I trusted God.
That's right.
Even when the mentors told me that's not a good idea, I trusted God. Just start. Stop asking people to partner with you and stop using it as their excuse to back out. Well, I called my homegirl and she don't want to go in business with me, so I'm just not going to go in business. God didn't call your homegirl to go in business with you. He called you to do it.
Come on.
He called you to save the next generation. So just start.
Just start.
That's the move I want you to make. Just start. No more excuses.
Jaylen. Wow. I knew that this conversation was going to be one to set many free. I thank you for your vulnerability. I thank you again for trusting this conversation to me.
Yes.
But I look forward to seeing how it's going to impact the world.
Yes.
Family, today's conversation with Jaylen, it reminded us that success is not just about the wins. It's about the faith to survive seasons of transition and the courage to keep moving forward. Now, 316 isn't just a brand. It's a statement of belief, and it's needed now more than ever. If this conversation spoke to you in any kind of way, and I know that it did, I need you to share it with someone else. Jaylen, before we leave, how do we connect with you? Where do we go?
So a lesson in branding is always keep it simple. We are 316 Collection, website, Instagram, Facebook, every platform. If you want to connect with me personally, it's just my name, Jaylen LaGrande, on every platform, and that's how we connect.
Jaylen, I thank you once again.
Thank you.
Family, as we always say here, I want you to make your next move your best move. And Jaylen said it, just start. Until next time, take care.